Hey, this is Doug Field, CEO of the Institute for Healthcare Consumers, along with my co-host Brent Macy, Managing Director. And welcome back to this segment of Healthcare Consumerism Radio. We're pleased to have joining us on this segment Barbara Gniewek, Principal Human Resource Service Practices with PricewaterhouseCoopers. Barbara, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, nice to have you on the program with us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about, I think you want, this change we see going on in the marketplace, healthcare insurance moving towards a more business consumer model, and specifically some results of a, current study that your Health Research Institute just released called The Rise of Retail Health Coverage.
Well, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Employers are really looking at private exchanges as a way to kind of get a win-win, and save money and also enhance their strategy, but give consumers a better experience. So we do see the market really highly interested in exchanges and moving towards this new model of benefit delivery.
Barbara, why do you think that is? Why do you think employers are looking at this new model? And for those that are still on the fence, kind of looking at this model, why do you think they're still on the fence?
Well, employers are looking at private exchanges in an effort to better control the cost of health care benefits. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what employers are always trying to do. And that continues to be a top priority for both the CHRO but other members of the C-suite as well. And we've been talking about this for years, but as trends continue to go up, and we see that that's continuing to happen in the market, especially with the consolidation of providers, hospitals buying physician practices, et cetera. Cost is still a big issue, and there's a tremendous amount of news exposure on private exchanges. And the exposure says there's a way to save money. So the promise of savings, whether it's through buying down, right-sizing, reduced administration, better discounts, that's why employers are interested in it, and that's why some are moving. But there are those that are kind of hanging out on the fence, and that group is really bifurcated, I would say. They're not necessarily waiting to see what happens. Some are, they don't want to be the first movers, but mm-hmm. others are really taking the time to evaluate the options. Mm-hmm. And so that's caused a little bit more of a delay than I think some of the exchanges would have hoped. And we're seeing the exchanges being, though, of tremendous interest to lots of industries. So while initially we thought it was retail and hospitality, the interest has really become much broader. Yeah. It's across all industries. But I think part of the reason that there is so much interest isn't just because of savings, but it's also because traditional advisors are in the business of exchanges and they're promoting their own exchange solutions. So so many employers are interested, and we've seen numbers as high as 45% are going to consider private exchanges in the next couple of years. We've seen numbers as low as a third, but still, 32, 33% is still a significant portion of employers, and we see it across all segments. But I think it's taken them a little bit longer to do the evaluation because they're trying to get an independent advisor to really help them evaluate the options, and there are a lot of options.
Do you see, what kind of run-up, Barbara, do you see, adoption timeframe do you see? I mean, there's been a lot of predictions that this is going to explode rapidly over the next 3 years. What kind of run-up do you see?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you say that again?
What he was saying, Barbara, how fast do you see the private exchange adoption taking place?
Yeah. So, I think that the outlook for 2015 was pretty positive, and I think there was some disappointment. And it kind of really depends on the market. So I think the disappointment really is that the people didn't make the decision to go 1/115, but they haven't made the decision not to go 1/116. So it's just, again, the prolonged. So on the active side, I think you'll see a tremendous amount of movement more in the 2016 and even 2017. So we're working with employers now. We're talking to a lot of employers, and when we're out speaking, that's kind of the time frame. And it's really to do something before the Cadillac tax. So it's somewhat tied to that. Mm-hmm. So while exchanges maybe didn't grow as much as they wanted to in 15, the activity was higher than they expected it to be. Mm-hmm. There's still a lot of movement in the mid-market And there's definitely some movement in the jumbo market as well, but I really think that it will be very hot on the active side for 2016, 2017. Mm-hmm. Also on the retiree side, the retiree exchanges have been around and are more mature or perceived to be more mature, especially in that post-65 market. And all the big companies, a lot of the big companies have already made that leap. And I would expect that market's really going to kind of be what we call or consider a land grab over the next 2 to 3 years. Yeah. But that's going to be very, very heated. And the active market is probably tied a little bit with the implementation of the Cadillac tax. And so if we kind of look at what the growth estimates are, and they're pretty significant, there are estimates out there that somewhere between 20 and 30% of all employers will kind of go the exchange route for their active employees. Mm-hmm. But it's a matter of kind of when is that really going to accelerate. And we would expect it to accelerate 2016, 2017, and get there kind of about 2020.
Now, Barbara, there at PwC, what type of feedback are you getting from the employee population that is getting engaged in these private exchange platforms?
You know, there is not a lot of press on it, but we do ask those that have gone, and we've looked at some of the survey information, and we're updating our survey right now to include that. But it's been pretty positive. The extra choice and the tools to become better consumers are very well received. And also the tools are getting better and better every year. Mm-hmm. So as the exchanges become more mature, we are seeing that the tools that help consumerism and provide access on physicians and quality and cost is really well received. So, it's been pretty positive. I've not heard a lot of negativity from the users, consumers.
Now, from, as we all know, there's a lot of different models out there. And, what do you think, the education process should be for helping employers kind of understand all these different models? And how do you at PwC help them fit into the right model that's right for that population?
Well, there are a lot of different models. There are, so many different exchanges, and there's, I think, new entrants even coming in that may not fit neatly into one of the models that are out there. And I think that creates a lot of the confusion, and that's part of the delay as well. So, PwC worked with 4 business coalitions on health, Northeast, Pacific, Midwest, and Employers Health, and created the Private Exchange Evaluation Collaborative. And our role really is just to put information out there on exchanges to help educate employers. But there are a lot of other places that employers can get smart on exchanges, through going to a lot of conferences, and there's a lot of industry print on exchanges. But I think it's really important when an employer is considering an exchange to make sure they understand the difference between a broker or consultant exchange and a carrier exchange and a technology or a pure play exchange. They're all very different. They have different services. They make money different ways, and they have different partners. So it's important, and we spend a lot of time when consulting with clients. We make sure that they understand the various value propositions of the different types of exchanges, but also which ones, based on what an employer is trying to do and what their objectives are, which ones might best meet their needs.
Now, if I'm an employer, Barbara, and I decide that I'm going to make this move, I'm going to go into an exchange, are there certain things that I give up by going into the exchange, or are there certain things that I gain by going into the exchange around my benefit programs?
Well, it really depends on which kind of exchange you pick.
Okay.
Quite honestly. So, and some exchanges are incredibly flexible. You really don't give up anything. Other exchanges, you give up some of the decisions on who your vendors might be or what plan design options you might have. And it also depends on what size employers you are. So there is, and some employers like some of the give up. So sometimes if you go into a certain, maybe a consultant exchange or a carrier exchange, perhaps if you think about a carrier exchange, that's the easiest. They're pushing their products, and they're not going to have a lot of other carriers on their platforms. A consultant exchange very often has their storefront or their plan designs already mapped out, so you can't necessarily have what you want from a plan design perspective. You have to choose from theirs. But some of them are more flexible than others. And so it really depends in terms of what you give up. If you still own the plan, you're still the fiduciary of the plan as an employer, it still looks like group benefits. But you do, some employers like the idea that they don't have to make some of the tedious decisions on how many dental cleanings to provide in a year, et cetera, that is kind of prepackaged, but they do get to make decisions on what's important for their strategy. Are you going to include coverage for bariatric surgery or infertility coverage, things like that. So what an employer may also give up is some of the administrative burdens or controls. And HR, is very mixed on that. They like having that relationship with their employees, and they're worried about that to some extent. Some are, some aren't. So it really depends, again, on what you're trying to do and what your objectives are. What you gain is you gain a pretty sleek technology tool that really can help enhance the consumer experience, make consumers be better, make employees be better consumers, and relieve some of the administrative burden. So, depending on what you want to do, that's what you can gain or lose from an exchange, depending on which type you go to.
Now, Barbara, we got about 1 minute left in the program, and leave us with one really good takeaway on the private exchange industry, and then let our audience know how they can contact you.
Okay. The private exchange industry, this is a very disruptive influence to benefits delivery, but it's something that can be really customized and create that win-win for an employer, something that you can use to help enhance your strategy and potentially better control your costs and give your employees a better experience that actually, rather than have them be employees who, are purchasers of health benefits once a year, really become engaged consumers of health care services. But I think that the one thing that employers really have to look at, especially, if their advisors are suggesting which exchanges to go to and they have an exchange, is make sure you understand what it costs. What are the fees, all of them, how much commissions are floating around, and then also make sure you understand exactly what services you get. I think that's the most important thing, and that's what we tell employers. No matter what you do, understand what you're paying and what you're paying for, and that will help you make sure you make the right decision on which exchange can best meet your needs.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Barbara. Have a great weekend. And for everyone out there, Barbara is going to be, and her team is going to be joining us at IHC Forum West to dig more into this hot topic of private exchanges out there. Again, Barbara, have a great weekend. And to the rest of our audience, please stay tuned for the next segment of Healthcare Consumerism Radio.